A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back to TV shows that deserve the spotlight. This is in fact going to be a pretty big episode, because why don't we talk a bit about a well-known Sega Genesis character known as Sonic the Hedgehog. More specifically, the show in question that I'm going to be talking about is Sonic X, a series that ran from 2003 to 2006 and was made possible thanks to the likes of Funimation and 4Kids. But let's be real here. This is not necessarily the whole reason why Sonic has gotten a lot better in more recent years, but it actually was a bit of a transitioning period to allow the media other than the games to basically spin and give us an even bigger point of recognition amongst the character and the legacy of Sega itself. After all, they still do, to this day, have full ownership of the franchise and the character himself. And the many companies that have come around, including DIC, Paramount, and various others here and there, they basically have permission by Sega to utilize Sonic in many ways possible. And there's been a lot of new shows that have come around recently, most often during the past 10 to 15 years. Many which would include Sonic Boom, Sonic Mania, the TV series based off of Sonic Mania from 2017, Sonic Prime, which is a Netflix exclusive, and even Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog live-action film series, Knuckles. Yeah, that's right. We're going to get a spin-off series starring Idris Elba's own version of Knuckles. We still have yet to see whether or not that's going to be around, but the thing is, with the supposed third film coming around at some point in the next year or so, I'm especially open to the idea of there being spin-off films and possibly even spin-off series like this. And so, Sonic X, however, is still one of the best that I might have seen in regards to Sonic-related media. I have gotten to know about the classic Sonic TV shows like The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog in '93, Sonic the Hedgehog, which also came around during that time, two different TV shows occurring around the same time, and also both of which starring the one and only Steve Urkel himself, Jaleel White. And then there was also Sonic Underground, which was basically one of the last TV shows that DIC would basically allow to create and air. But then when 4Kids came around and took the whole world by storm, utilizing lots of properties here and there, not just Sonic the Hedgehog, but they also had a ton of other stuff going on, like Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, and lots more. I mean, they were handling all kinds of crazy anime stuff back in the day. And just to know that almost 20 years later, the fact is, they've left quite an impression, despite being another case of a defunct company. A company that took the world by storm back then, but has since gone down the gutter pretty badly. I guess you could say that in the same way that we've seen other large companies, like Telltale Games, or even some others, at some point they have a big golden age, but then all of a sudden, everything goes downhill in a mere instant. But above all that, though, Sonic X isn't necessarily the reason why they would eventually flop. But apart from 4Kids and Funimation's own handling of the show itself back in the day when there wasn't that much internet to take a hold of, these days, everybody's gotten a hold of the show at some point. Whether it be through DVDs, as I originally did back in the day, to the internet itself, YouTube especially, having the whole show in all 78 episodes. By the way, let's go cycle through those real quick. So now that we got that part covered, that's a lot of episodes across all those seasons that basically came and went between those years. And the thing is, I've barely gotten to talk much about the show itself. The show itself basically starts in Green Hills, basically. The unofficial name regarding the world that Sonic the Hedgehog and company live in, alongside his rival, Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik. Even though the Robotnik part of his name isn't necessarily as well recognized as Eggman, it still is technically his actual name. But anyways, though, Eggman's big mission is to go find the Chaos Emeralds and use them to create a huge empire and rule the world, while Sonic is there to stop him every step of the way that he tries to make it happen. But then, all of a sudden, the Chaos Emeralds basically converge with an enormous power surge that causes the world to white out in entire ways that you would never think possible. Then all of a sudden, Sonic himself finds out that he is in fact in another world. It turns out that this immense power from the Emeralds had caused them to transport into another dimension. And this dimension was in fact real life. There they were on planet Earth. Crazy as it might sound. Sonic is confronted by a Formula One team led by a man named Sam, leader of the S-Team. He races with them, manages to land in a pool by accident, and then gets saved by a boy named Chris Thorndyke, whom is in fact the son of a wealthy family. And he also is the grandson of a famous professor known as Dr. Thorndyke. Or Chuck for short, basically. But as the series basically continues, it's an all-out adventure. Kind of in a similar way to how elaborate an entire series was made elsewhere. If you can't exactly pinpoint what I'm getting at here, well, why don't we talk back a few episodes in TV shows that I have basically talked about before. One particular case was in fact the more recent Dragon Ball Super. That's right. Sonic the Hedgehog was actually confirmed to have ripped off the entire plotline of Dragon Ball Z. Incredible as that sounds, I mean, Billiam would explain this better than me, but unfortunately, his second top 10 WTF Sonic moments video has since been taken down. I wish that they didn't do such a thing. But in all seriousness, Sonic the Hedgehog completely rips off Dragon Ball Z. So it is an extremely similar, if not complete ripoff of what kind of elaborate writing and whatnot that Dragon Ball Z had put together. And the fact is that Sonic X was over 10 years later. And I mean, it probably is, let's be real here. It's one of those episodic shows that just continues where it left off every single time. And rarely does it make a time skip or have some kind of altercation to the storyline that we wouldn't have thought possible. But you know what though? That itself is a complex detail in and of itself. And I might as well just not go too much further into it. Other things I could probably mention are the cast. You have Sonic, who is voiced by Jason Griffith, Tails, voiced by Amy Pallett, Amy Rose, voiced by Lisa Ortiz, Robotnik, or Eggman, voiced by, well, good old Mike Pollock. This is one of the only instances, by the way, where one actor has carried on the same voice role for a long time. If you haven't figured it out, well, 20 years Mike Pollock has been voicing Eggman in the games, in the shows, and in some ways as well elsewhere. I mean, don't you think that's crazy? I mean, the only other real exception is the fact that they have Jim Carrey playing Eggman in the Paramount films. And I'm sure that with the upcoming Knuckles show adaptation, he might be in that show. Who really knows? Again, we don't have that much news to cover on for that part, but I guess for the time being, let's just stick to what we have here for the material in this series. But that's still amazing, if you ask me. How one actor has carried on the same role the whole time, no changes whatsoever. But everybody else has been different in some ways. Anyways, though, You got many other characters, pretty much. A pretty huge cast with a lot of actors. And I can tell you, it's a big series to cover up on. So I feel like that is, the less said the better. Watch the show. It probably is my best word of advice. Of course, you got lots of things to cover here. You got Rouge the Bat stealing all kinds of crazy treasures, getting caught by the government, being forced to work for the government. You got Sonic the Hedgehog encountering Shadow the Hedgehog and getting framed for crimes he didn't commit. Then you got the truth revealed about Shadow the Hedgehog and the fact that he was created by an early ancestor of Dr. Eggman himself. So, man, I mean, it is a pretty impressive series if you ask me. One of the fact is that, well, it's entirely just Dragon Ball Z, but with a whole different feel to it. I mean, instead of Saiyans, you have hedgehogs that can go ballistic when they collect enough rings, and the power of all 7 Chaos Emeralds, which in a way are quite similar to the immense power of the 7 Dragon Balls in a way. And on top of that, you have a main character who loves adventure, food, has an extreme natural ability, Sonic being high speed and Goku being amazingly skilled at fighting. And then you basically have a friend who's highly skilled and highly intelligent, which in this case is either Bulma or Tails. And then we can't forget the fact that, well, there's an enemy character, Knuckles or Piccolo. And then, of course, there's a black-haired bad guy like Shadow or Vegeta. Or maybe even there's that point where someone comes back from the future, which in this case is either Silver the Hedgehog or Trunks. If that's not enough details to cover, though, based on exactly how parallel both these franchises are to each other, then, oh man, Sonic the Hedgehog and Dragon Ball Z might as well be Garfield and Ghostbusters. Like, how many times do we have to have two franchises come together like they're brothers all of a sudden? It's just crazy. How do they do this? How does anybody out there get the idea that maybe we ought to make Marvel fit in with Star Wars, or Thomas and Friends fit in with Toy Story, or I don't even know. Like, to tell you the truth though, I feel little to no difference. Just because there are so many similarities that are parallel to each other between franchises. I still love Sonic X for what it is. Oh, but if you want to know the biggest complete freak out that I might ever possibly have in regards to how similar Sonic and Dragon Ball are to each other, well, get this. One particular episode in the first season called Unfair Ball, where Sonic and company battle Dr. Eggman and his army of villainous robots, including his 2 assistants, Deco and Boko, which were, by the way, replaced by Orbot and Cubot in later years. So, another good exemplification of how, while one actor stays with his own role for a long time, everything else changes. I can't quite think of anything else in relation to that part, though. So, in all honesties, just go with that whole thing. But, anyways, though, Unfair Ball came out in 2003. However, Dragon Ball Super, which came out many years later, also has a baseball episode. Gosh, I don't get it anymore. Like, what are they doing? I'm done. I'm absolutely done here. Oh man, that is just crazy. But I really do love Sonic X though. For what it is, Dragon Ball Super also doesn't suck. Shut up, everybody out there. And, well, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on well, wherever you can find me, since social media absolutely sucks and I have no way of ever getting back to it. And stay on the Hollywood side if you'd like to see more on the channel.